Dylan Mulvaney, the big controversy surrounding Bud Light. Is this something to worry about? Has our society gone mad? Does it point at what people actually care about versus what actually matters? Well, today on Talk Sober, we are going to unpack that, and we're going to talk about the truth about what's really going on, what we think the Bud Light Corporation kind of failed on, and what Bud Light fans are getting completely wrong. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Talk Sober Show, where we are going to get a lot of hate comments because people are not going to like what we have to say because they're happy in their ideals. So, Terry, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing well. This should be a fun one.
Excellent. All right, so this controversy came out. Budweiser and Bud Light had a big controversy because they sent Dylan Mulvaney a bunch of free cans with her picture on it. And apparently the Bud Light community got really mad. And I think by Bud Light community, there is a certain group of people that are like, you know, the hold my beer people. Those ones that, hey, hold my beer. We're going to go watch some NASCAR and be men. That's what we're going to do. And I think that Budweiser and Bud Light actually do cater to a lot of that crowd. I did like the Bud Light. I had the Bud Light on tap in my office back when I was drinking heavily, and I did enjoy it. And but I didn't really care what the company did until I got sober. And now I do care what the company does because things like this really point at flaws in our society and things that we get excited about that really at the end of the day don't really matter to us, right? Like all these people that are getting upset about Bud Light giving Dylan Mulvaney her own can, like why? Why does that bother you one bit? Why does it matter what one person decides to do with their life? It doesn't make a difference to you at all. And, it's funny because we have all this controversy, and I think Kid Rock went out there and bought a bunch of Bud Light to destroy it, which is like, okay, that's alcohol abuse. Me and Terry are alcoholics, but we didn't abuse alcohol like that. And we didn't get all excited about things like this that didn't matter. Although when I did drink, I did really care about things that I thought were moral issues and things that I thought were right and wrong, when in actuality, it's like, who am I to tell someone how to live their life? And, yay Dylan for living the life the way that she wants. And, everyone is entitled to their opinion, but I think that a lot of times we get hung up on things that don't matter. And a lot of times it's very difficult because here we are scrutinizing Bud Light over bothering some person who just wants to live their life the way they want, yet they turn a blind eye to the fact that they market to alcoholics every single day. Like that to me is a problem. What do you think about that, Terry?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the controversy that's all over the media is not the fact that they market to alcoholics and market to people and making them alcoholics and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's the controversy is who they're catering to, and the fact that they've lost all sorts of sales and stuff. And actually, if you look at the numbers, they have lost no sales. Mm-hmm. And actually, their stock price had gone up 47% in the last 2 years. So they can take a hit, no problem. Mm-hmm. But it's the marketing it's the marketing that the alcohol industry does in general. And does that make us alcoholics? Well, of course not. It's our own choices, our own actions, and maybe some other things like just genetically predisposed to alcoholism, something like that. Mm-hmm. But the marketing doesn't help at all. I mean, they make it look like, going to the beach, you have to have a Bud Light or you have to have a beer or whatever. It's going to make everything better. When in reality, alcohol has no benefits whatsoever. Yeah. There are no benefits to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, even in the comments, someone's like, oh, it's him, not her. This is ridiculous. Well, I don't care what people choose to be called by. Like, if you want to be called by whatever you want, I'm going to respect that because I respect you as a person. Just like in the alcohol world where, a lot of people get bent out of shape for alcoholics that identify as alcoholics. They're like, oh, well, you don't drink anymore, so you're not an alcoholic anymore. Well, who am I to say what is and isn't working for someone else's recovery?
Yeah.
right? I try to be open to all things. And, if someone feels a certain way about their life and wants to be a certain type of person or whatever it is, who am I to stand in the way? It's there was a really good song from a band that I saw live a couple of months ago. And I will tell you, live now, they're terrible. Don't go see them. It's Jane's Addiction. And they completely ruin their songs because they're like, dude, you guys are terrible live. But there was a song that I really liked because I used to be a staunch preacher. I would stand on the road in Santa Monica and yell at a bunch of people and tell them they're going to hell. So I was the type of person that 25 years ago, I would have gotten excited about this. I would have said, oh, it's a him, not a her, and this is an abomination to God. But then when I got sober, I realized, hey, wait a minute. Who am I to say how someone should live? Who am I to say who is this, how they should be? And I learned that all it does is get me excited. That person's going to keep being who they are regardless of what I say or do. Like, I don't think this controversy is going to make Dylan wake up one day and say, oh, wait, I really do want to be the way that all those evangelicals say, right? But those evangelicals, if you dig into their life, oftentimes they're worse than the people that they're condemning. I know because I was in that world. And it's interesting because it's easy to be on a high horse and say who should be what, right? Who should be what? And I had to get to the point in sobriety where I said to myself, I'm not an expert on these things. And back to that song by Jane's Addiction, it says, then you'd really know what it's like. And it's about walking a mile in someone else's shoes and saying, well, what if I understood it? And this is something I think is at the crux of alcoholism. Understanding that we don't know what people are going through. You don't know what it's like to be them. And case in point, I know that chemically altering myself with alcohol makes me a completely different person than I was before. I was depressed. I didn't like life. My brain thought differently. And these are the things, like if you want to get behind something and rally behind something, let's forget about people who just want to be themselves. Dylan ain't bugging no one. She's out there on social media. She got her own Bud Light can. Big deal. Big deal. Go, more power to you. But every day, the alcohol companies are making billions of dollars knowingly marketing to alcoholics. Knowingly, they know their customer base because it wasn't the guy at the football game who has a beer every 6 months. No. It's me spending $1,200 a month on alcohol when I was an alcoholic. That's who they market to. They know that it's going to be that way. And when you understand that, like, wait a minute, let's pick our battles. Right? Let's pick our battles. And this happens in politics. People get all excited about one thing, and I'm like, you're missing the complete point. The point is the whole thing's screwed up, not, oh, hey, this one thing. Right? And we start to understand it. And like Robert said, before my alcoholic breakdown, I used to care about politics. Not so much anymore. Exactly. And our life is better because of it. Like, why would we care about one person and what they do with their life? Let them live their life. I'm not asking them to accept everything and parade it. Just be you and I'll be me. And I think that our idea of what we think is right and wrong is skewed. What do you think about that, Terry?
Oh, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. For me, yeah, you really allude to one of the biggest points here. And for me, that's just letting it go, letting go what other people do, what other people think. If it's not affecting me, I'm not going to worry about it. This is huge in sobriety, as far as just trying to live my life, take care of myself. If I start to stress about what a trans person is doing and is it right or wrong, then I'm just missing the point of life. And for me to stay sober, one of the important things is that I get to enjoy life. I don't sit there and focus on the negative. Robert talked about staying out of the politics, and I have interest in politics, so I don't I don't just keep it out of my life. I do pay attention to it, but I don't let it get to me. And same thing with what other people are doing that may not be living a lifestyle that I think is moral or whatever. I don't worry about it, and my opinions just don't matter. Are my opinions going to affect that person? No, they're going to affect me. They're going to take up space in my mind, and they're gonna affect my actions. I'm going to start to look at things more negatively. What I focus on is how I'm going to start to react to life, and if I start to focus on that, I'm going to start to focus on the guy that drives too fast in my neighborhood and all that. And of course, that's dangerous, and I do have opinions, and I'll try to do whatever I can about that. But there's only so much I can do about these things, and putting my focus on things that I don't necessarily agree with or whatever, it's just not going to help me in my sobriety. And as I've said a million times, sobriety has to be the most important thing in my life. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting because the way that our mind works, we want to go down every rabbit hole and think about every different thing. Someone was mentioning, it's when the guys dominate women's sports that this becomes an issue. And I'm like, well, are they? Are they like I watched the Olympics and I didn't see that happening. I don't even, now granted, I can probably only name like 4 football players, but I can't name that many women sports stars where this would be affecting them, right? And that's something where it's like, let's cross that bridge when we get to it, right? Because we have a tendency to future trip. In alcoholism, what we do is we think about the future and we get all psyched up about all this stuff and all excited about things that are going on that haven't even happened yet. Like, I remember people were saying when Trump got elected, it would be the end of the world and this is going to happen and here's how life is going to be. Really, in actuality, it didn't change much at all. And then Biden got elected. Oh, this is what's going to happen. Really didn't change all that much at all. Like, life didn't really change that much one way or the other. Yet the news makes you think that all these things are all big controversies and they're going to change your life, much like the Dylan Mulvaney thing with Bud Light. Does that do anything to your life? Not at all. It doesn't bother me at all when people want to be who people want to be. It bothers people when they get this moral high ground of, I am going to judge you by my set of rules that I think is good. And this irritates me because I spent years going to church with my family, knowing what they were like outside of church. And I'm like, some of you guys should be in jail for stuff that you do, yet you sit there with your Bible every week and judge other people. And it's like, okay, let's clear the playing field here and look at what's really going on. And with Budweiser, like, you're sitting there saying, oh, you have a bent toenail when the whole body's out of whack, right? The alcohol industry needs to be responsible for alcoholism, right? Why is it $100,000 to go to rehab and alcohol companies don't have to pay anything for it? Insurance companies don't even cover it. I had to pay pocket. Terry had to pay out of pocket for his. Why? Why, when they knowingly market to alcoholics, why is the issue, oh, they gave some beer to a gal or a guy that wants to be a gal or a trans or whatever the controversy of the day is? Why is that the issue? Like, right. I think we need to take a look at this, a big look at this in terms of where our focus is because, last I checked, Dylan ain't hurting anyone. Alcohol is. Alcohol is responsible for so many drunk driving accidents. Why? Because they don't want to regulate it. Like here in Orlando, there's a law that was going to be passed where if you have an alcohol establishment, you have to hire X amount of police officers for however big your place is. So if it's 20 people big, you have like 1 or 2 officers, and that bar has to hire them. Why? Oh. Because they're knowingly serving drunk people because it makes money. You think if drinks were free after midnight, bars would still stay open? No, they wouldn't. Right? They're deliberately making money on this, and we're pointing the finger at something that doesn't really matter. Right? And that to me that's a problem. I don't know. How do you guys think about that? Let us know in the comments. Let us know what you guys think about this topic, because I think the alcohol companies are like the oil companies. Like the oil companies can destroy the earth to no avail, and they get away with it. Why? Because they got lobbyists. Alcohol, same thing, lobbyists. And what do we point at? Oh, well, this one thing over here. That oil executive doesn't like gay people. Well, who cares? He's destroying the whole earth. Who cares? And I think that's the thing is we're pointing at the wrong thing.
True. And the alcohol companies do have some blame there. But then at the same time, my sobriety is my responsibility. So I do have to let go of what their marketing and all that. And all it is for me is just acceptance that that's the way it is right now. If something comes up that I can vote on, I'll have to look at it and, vote accordingly. But for me, I still have to be responsible. And I see those ads, and sometimes the ads get to me. You're watching the baseball game and you see that ad and it just looks wonderful. But that's it. I can let it go. Like Celia said, that stuff doesn't affect her because her commitment to sobriety is the ultimate winner of her life and overtaking the controversy. That's the way I look at it too. My commitment to sobriety is as solid as I can make it. And that's what keeps me away, and just focusing on the sobriety, not worrying about the other stuff. That's what it is. Is just let it go.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we look at the wrong things in society that society has deemed normal or okay or righteous or good, and sometimes they're not up to speed. Like dealing with sexuality issues. Some of the people that I know who are gay or live lifestyles that the church frowns upon are the nicest, most loving people I've ever met.
Absolutely.
And some of the most Bible-thumping religious people are some of the biggest, not nice people I've ever met. And, when we understand this, it's like, why should someone not be free to live the way they want? Right? You have all these people, Bud Light, go America, American flag, freedom, but not to be who you want to be. Oh, well, why not? I thought freedom went for everything. Freedom of speech. Yeah, but don't say that. Well, I thought it was freedom of speech. Yeah, but you can't talk bad about this. Why not? Why are they free and other people aren't? And we start to understand exactly what's going on, and we start to look at it and say, hey, wait a minute. These people aren't really bothering all that much. Now, when Trenton talks about like sports and stuff, cross that bridge when we get to it. So far, I don't see a whole lot of evidence of it. Again, I don't watch it, but I don't have any control over it. Like, I don't know. What if a gal wants to play football? It's up to them. I don't know. I'm not in control of that. But what I am in control of is my alcoholism and making a stand for things that I think are right. Making a stand for things that I think make a difference. And that is holding alcoholic companies accountable and understanding exactly what's going on.
Yeah. And for that male swimmer thing, I guess he did dominate and was completely, was just winning every race or whatever, or most of them, something like that. And there was big controversy, but what control do I have over that? That's where this comes in, is I don't have any control over it. Yeah, it's confusing. I don't know.
It's kind of like in the Winter Olympics years ago when they said that smoking pot was a performance enhancing drug. I don't think so. When I did, it wasn't.
It motivated me when I was
But yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I tend to look at things that have to do with my life.
Yeah.
What is it that I'm going to do? I am not on those sports teams. I'm not on the board of directors on those sports teams. I can't change the outcome one iota. I can't do anything about it. What can I do? I can talk about how alcohol companies are getting in controversies and how people are looking at things that don't really make a huge difference and bothering people that aren't really bothering people, and not holding the alcohol companies accountable, right? And we have to look at that and we have to understand it and say, hey, you know what, where are our priorities? And as a drunk, as an alcoholic, my priorities were completely skewed. I focused on things that didn't matter. I got drunk over things that didn't make a difference. I got drunk over things that I couldn't control one way or the other. And one of the things I learned in sobriety with the Serenity Prayer is give me the courage to accept the things I can't change. I need to accept things that I can't change. I can't change that we live in a world that is rapidly growing and new things are coming all the time. And if I get stuck in my old ways of thinking, maybe I'll have a problem. Maybe I do need to adapt sometimes, right? Maybe I do need to learn and grow sometimes. Maybe there are things that I can change my way of thinking on. Maybe I could be more accepting to certain people or groups or certain ideas. Maybe I can look at this in a different way. And maybe I can focus on things that are making a difference, which is alcoholics are struggling every day.
Yeah.
Every day. There are alcoholics that die every single day. Why? Because the recovery community is hush-hush because the alcohol companies make more. That's why. Why doesn't it say something on there like cigarettes are addictive, blah, blah, blah? Alcohol, hey, this is addictive. Alcoholics die. Here's a number to call. Why isn't that on the bottle? I drank a lot of bottles. I didn't see that on any of them. Why aren't there free classes? Not just AA. Why aren't there free classes that teach you about chemical dependency? My hunch is they're too busy looking at things that don't matter and counting their dollars. That's probably what's going on.
True. And you could actually make an argument against rehabs that are trying to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
They're trying to just make that dollar as well.
Yeah.
But it really that's why I say that, my recovery does come down to me, and it is my responsibility. Now, I'm not saying that I was able to get sober by myself. I wasn't. I needed help. I needed rehab. I needed all of the outside help that I was able to get. And I probably needed more in the beginning, but I was able to muddle my way through it and finally get sober. But I still have to take care of this stuff myself. This is me, and I have to look through all the ulterior motives, which is usually money. I have to look through that, and focus on what I need to focus on, and that's why I really try to emphasize that to be sober, to live sober, I want to have this life that I don't have to run from, and worried about things like Mulvaney and the alcohol companies marketing to alcoholics. I have to just look past that. I understand that it's an issue, and I understand that there's the Mulvaney controversy and all that. But for me to get sober and stay sober, that I need to worry about my life. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways with today, is that we need to worry about ourselves and not worry about others. And that's, for me, that's what helps me stay sober. Definitely, it helps me live a nice, serene, reasonably happy life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's interesting too, because I think that the alcohol industry is behind the times as far as the tobacco industry. The tobacco industry has to make straight up commercials that are like, hey, here's what's going to happen. Right. And it would be nice if the alcohol companies were mandated to spend a tiny, tiny bit of the fortunes they're making on something that's like, hey, do you feel this way? Do you feel that way? Maybe you're an alcoholic. Go here to get help. That would be something good. Right. And that's, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, maybe they should be required to do even more than that, help pay for some of the rehabs.
Absolutely.
Because in all honesty, 90, 95%, whatever, of the people that drink alcohol don't become addicted. So, and they don't have a problem with it. I'm not saying that it does them any good to drink, because it doesn't, but maybe they should put more money into helping people get sober that need the help.
Absolutely.
But it's hard, because a lot of people that become addicted, they don't make it. They don't seek the help, they don't get the help before it's too late, and that's a real unfortunate thing.
I think too, it would be interesting if that was more in your face. Like I do believe that when I was drinking, if I understood chemical dependency, things would have changed faster. Because I didn't understand. I was like, why can't I stop drinking? And the answer was, you're weak, you this, that, your family, your therapy, your this. And it's like, no, it's chemical dependency. And when we understand chemical dependency, things change big time, right? And then we understand, okay, now if I know it's chemical dependency, I stop the chemical. And I could get why the alcohol companies wouldn't want you to know that. Because if it's like, oh, it's chemical dependency, well, where are you getting that chemical? Oh, a beer. There's where I get it. Better not buy that anymore. Yeah, I do get that. Same with tobacco, right? It's like, hey, you're going to look like this. Do you want to? No. That was for alcoholism. When I quit, it was because of the fact that I understood chemical dependency was making me that way. And alcohol was the sum of the problems that made me drink. There was the problem solved. Now I do have to work daily to not drink, because it's like, okay, this is going to be difficult. Things will come up. Same thing with cigar smoking. My dad, before he passed, he was like, hey, come look at my throat cancer. And I was like, I don't want to look at it. He was like, come look at it. And I went and looked at it. That was the last cigar I ever touched, because it was like, now I see it, it's real. That causes these issues, right? And we start to realize, wait a minute, yeah, there is blame on the alcohol. Now, it's my responsibility to understand, but it's society's fault for not making it a big thing. Like back in the old days, you look at the Bible times and they talk about demon-possessed people. Now we know, well, that guy probably had OCD, or he probably had manic depressive disorder. We know all these things now. But back then it was like, guy's got demons, put him in the shed. It's like, wait a minute. There's things you can do to help these people when we get past all this stuff. And when we look at these controversies, it's like, where is our focus, right? Where is our focus? Because if we bring up things like, sports or whatever, that is undermining someone wanting to live the way that they want to live. As long as they're not hurting anyone, let them do their thing. So if you say, oh, well, I don't think Bud Light should give this person their own can because, men dominating women's sports. Well, that's not what she's trying to do. She's just an influencer who happens to have a crowd that likes her stuff. Alcoholics. Well, there was one alcoholic who did this, therefore all of them should be shut away, right? No. Let's stop the action that is a problem. Okay, let's deal with that, however society is going to deal with it, and let's get on with our life and not penalize everyone for one thing that you don't agree with, right? It's a slippery slope, and I think we need to, as a society, we need to work on accepting a lot more, because as an alcoholic, I'm glad people accepted that I had a problem. I'm glad they accepted me for where I was. And I'm not saying that some of these other issues are problems. I'm saying acceptance needs to be an issue. Why can't we accept someone where they are and accept that, hey, if they want to get a sponsorship, more power to them. Not hurting anyone. Big deal. Kid Rock going to go throw a fit about it? Well, Kid Rock throws a fit about everything. You would think having millions of dollars, you wouldn't throw that many fits. I don't know. I mean, my kids stopped throwing fits they're teenagers, so they haven't stopped yet, but you get the idea, right? And we start to understand, like, hey, wait a minute. What am I spending my time focused on?
Well, maybe the negative publicity that Kid Rock portrays helps him. Just like the negative publicity that the Bud Light ad did. It did not help them in the beginning. But a month later, right now, their stock is at the all-time high. So, it's helped them.
Well, and come on, Kid Rock, we don't think you destroyed all of them. Like, I'm sure you still buy your own stash. That was just a publicity stunt. Like, for me, I mean, when I was an alcoholic, Bud Light could have said, we don't like people named Marcus. And I'd be like, well, that's something to drink over. Go get me another case of Bud Light. They don't like me, right? And that's the thing, is like, we need to get real about what really matters. And we need to get real about accepting people where they're at, because you don't know what people are going through or what they think. I am not an expert on people who feel they were born the wrong gender. And how dare am I to say, well, hey, no, you should be this way because that's how I am, right? The world of alcoholics is full of people who should. You should do this. You know what you should do? Terry, you should do. I'm not an expert on Terry's life. I don't know what Terry goes through. I don't know what life was like for him. Now, we do know a lot about Terry because of this channel, but, there's lots of people I don't understand. And the minute I sit on a high horse and say, well, this is what I get and this is how you should be, I think there's problems there. For you, right? It's like they say, forgiveness is about you. When you forgive someone, it's about freeing you up. And when you hate someone, it's about freeing you up. You're bottled up with it. They're fine. Right? And it's a two-way street.
Yeah. Lots of great comments. Appreciate them all.
Yep, and congrats to the sober people.
Yeah, absolutely. And re-welcome all the regulars that are here. I won't go through them one by one, but great to see you all here. Absolutely. I love it. I'll comment. Kid Rock equals not a kid and not a rock. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called. Okay, I won't say what it sounds like to me, but but yeah, interesting.
But, Timberwolf said my focus is on bettering myself, period. And that's what I try to do too. And some days I don't succeed. I definitely don't. Some days I go backwards. But what I try to do is just, I try to better myself, try to live a good life, and try not to worry about what other people are saying or doing. Unless it affects me personally, then I have to deal with it. But other than that, I let it go.
Yeah. And that's a big thing I learned. Because I remember even in sobriety, when the whole politics happened in 2016, was it? I got excited about things and I'd get bent out of shape about things. And I realized at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a difference.
Right.
Do I agree with things? Some. Do I not agree with things? Some. But, it's like my uncle said, we talk about it all the time. He said, everybody finds something to do. I'm doing this. And it's like, okay, cut out the distractions. Everyone finds something to do, because what am I doing? I'm going to be sober. I'm going to try to be an accepting, kind, loving person, and I'm going to do the best I can. Now, am I going to be the best version of myself if I'm scrutinizing what people should and shouldn't do? No. Am I going to be the best version of myself if I spend my life pointing fingers at other people? No. I am, though, if I'm accepting and I say, hey, you know what? Everyone is entitled to their own opinions and their own way of life. And, hey, I'm good with that. Christine, welcome to the Talk Sober family.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. It's interesting. Let's talk social media for a second. And I've got friends on whatever social media, and they've, especially, at that 2016 election, but, since then, they post, 90% of what they post is the political stuff on whatever side they're on. And then I see these people in person as well through, going through my daily activities, and they talk about it all the time. And they just seem, I don't know for sure, but they seem so miserable. Their thoughts are just so negative all the time. And this person, this politician did this, oh, guess what's going to happen tomorrow with this one, all this stuff. And they seem so miserable. Now, on the other side of the coin, I see a lot of sober alcoholics. And yes, there's some of those sober alcoholics that have been sober for 40 years. And they seem pretty grumpy. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that to be my sobriety. Ugh. but that's few and far between. Most of them with whether even ones with not very much sobriety time, but up to ones with those 40, 45 years of sobriety, most of them are super happy. They're content with their life. And what I see in the difference in their actions is they don't focus on this stuff. They don't worry about this stuff. They just worry about, what am I doing today? And Timberwolf said earlier, I worry about lunch. I'm more worried about what I'm going to have for lunch. That's what they worry about. I'm going to go out to lunch with this guy, and it's going to be a nice lunch. Things like that. And that's just some of the observations I see. So which one should I focus on? The negative stuff, or the guy that's enjoying life? I'm going to try to do what he's doing and try not to worry about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key, is just understanding, hey, I'm going to focus on my sobriety.
Yeah.
Maybe eventually I'll help lead a movement to make alcohol companies pay for sobriety education. But for right now, I'm focused on getting sober.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And like Marilyn says, one thing I've learned in sobriety, it's none of my business what other people think of me. Absolutely. And it's funny because people don't think about me as much as I think they do.
Right.
Most people don't care. And that's the key. And that's a society programming, right? I mean, if you look at how we grow through society, like going to school is basically society training. That's why, you learn a lot of stuff you're not going to use, because it's society training. It's not so much about the education as it is about the socialization. And we learn to be afraid, right? When you're a baby, you could go speak in front of 9 million people. Like if I held you up in front of like the Pope welcoming, I think there's like 1 million people who go to that, right? You wouldn't care. You'd cry and you'd yell and do whatever you want. But through school, you learn to be afraid of speaking in front of other people. It was a learned behavior. It's like Richard Bandler always says, when you're born, you're afraid of two things: loud noises and falling. Everything else is learned. You learn to be afraid. You learn to care what people think. The internet has taught us to be afraid of what strangers think 9 million miles away with a keyboard.
Right. Yeah.
We were taught to be afraid of certain things. Like, I think at the core of it, a lot of things that are in our society are fear. We're afraid. This group's going to take over. This is going to happen. These people, if society sides with these people, everything's going to break loose. And it's like, okay, is it really? Is that really what's going on? Like, I'd like to think that God, whoever he or she is, up or down or wherever they are, is more concerned with like feeding people who are hungry than what people choose to do with their sexuality. Like, I hope that's what they care about, because like, people that are starving and things that are injustices are a big deal. What someone chooses to do with their life, not so much. Right. And that's what I start to think of. And that was a point of view that I worked hard for in sobriety, because I was brought up to believe, hey, these things are this way and those people are bad. I went to a church, and this church was made big. If you study the church's history, maybe we'll do a video on it or something. But the church's history is kind of disturbing. It was the movement in Southern California that became one of the first gigantic mega church franchise empires. And it was built knowingly because there was a charismatic gay preacher, and the guy who started the church allowed that guy to preach and make the church big. And then when the church was big, he was like, oh, this guy's like that, get him out of here. And I'm like, that is the worst thing you could possibly do to someone. Like, okay, but whatever, to each his own. And that's the kind of thing that, I forgot where my train of thought was going with that, but it was built on that. And you look at how these things tie together, and that church was built not just on that, but every Sunday we would sit there and hear the pastor talk about, we are good because they are bad. Not we're good because we like this stuff. No, we're good because they're bad. And it was the comparison of, oh, I'm not like those people, so therefore I'm good. Instead of looking at, well, what is the good? Instead of looking at, okay, well, what do I try to be? What do I strive to be? Who do I want to be? Right? And our society is about that, because we feel better by looking down on others. I feel taller if I look down on someone. instead of saying, well, I feel taller because I feel good today and I feel strong in my beliefs and in my way of life, right? And that's something that I had to learn in sobriety. That was a difficult lesson because I was always like, oh, I'm good because of this, you know, and it's...
or I'm good because of what I'm doing. It's not because of what I've done that's good. I'm good because I'm striving to be good in the future. I'm striving to do better things. And also, maybe I'm good because I do make mistakes and I try to fix myself from them. And if I do make the mistakes and hurt somebody, I amend that situation.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not perfect, that's for sure. I make mistakes, and unfortunately, sometimes somebody gets hurt because of it, and I have to take care of that. I can't just walk along and ignore the situation.
Absolutely. And it's easy to find a villain, you know, whether you're finding a villain that is someone who has a different point of view, or someone like Dylan. Oh, I'm not like them, therefore I'm this way. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why does it even matter? Why does that matter? Right? Why don't you just focus on what you're doing and let other people focus on what they're doing? You know, why does it have to be a big spectacle? Why can't we just accept and grow and learn? You know, and I think that's the thing that's going to help. And I know that is one of the things that helps me stay sober, is being able to accept not only that I'm an alcoholic, but accept that the world is the way it is. And I'm not going to rush in on some high horse pointing a finger at who and why people should be the way they are. Okay? And that, to me, I think is important.
Absolutely. And whether, Bob, you're hanging by a thread, that's what you say, and you can make that thread a lot stronger. You can turn it into rope. Keep putting sobriety as your top priority every day. And I forgot who said it earlier, but they were on the hour by hour staying sober method. They were having a tough time as well, and that's the way it can be. And it might be that way for a little while, but it will get better. You'll be able to work through it. Just keep doing everything you can. You can hit up our Talk Sober program as well, but you can go to meetings, hospital meetings. There's stuff all over the place if you just put the effort into to stay sober. Just make it your priority. You can get there.
Yep. And you say you have some tough stuff coming up. I don't even want to. And that's an example. He's got an issue where he lost someone in his family, lost his son. I could sit here and I could say, well, in sobriety, we need to. I don't know what that would be like for me. Yeah. I don't know. There are magic buttons that would make any of us drink. Yep. I don't know what mine are. I sure don't want to figure them out. I know that would be really high on my button list. That would be very difficult. And what I try to do in those situations, like last year, or was it a year and a half ago, we lost my dad. It was very difficult. He was taken from us too soon. He was I don't even think he turned 70. He was about to turn 70. And acceptance and celebrating the life that was. Instead of looking at what I don't have, I look at what I did have. And to me, that's the best way of honoring someone's memory, is to say, hey, I'm going to look at what I did have. Because I didn't lose them. I got them. I didn't lose my dad. I got my dad. And it's difficult to look at, but it's looking at the gain rather than the loss, because that is something that you got. And I can celebrate and say, I look at my daughter and I'm like, her humor is like my dad's every day. There it is. He's still here in some way, and you just look at that and start to understand, I get this. Everything in life is a gift. It's not a, takeaway, but we look at it as a takeaway instead of a gift. But it is a gift, and we can focus on that, and we can live our life accordingly.
Yeah, well put, Marcus. I agree.
All right. With that said, if you want to support the channel, go to talksober.com. Post your comments and thoughts below. If you agree with us, don't agree with us, like what we have to say, don't like what we have to say, everything gives us feedback, and that does help. So go
Absolutely.
from there. And then if you want to support the channel, go to talksober.com, click the big yellow button. You can sign up. It's like less than $1 a day. You get all kinds of MP3s, PDFs, stuff to go through to help you get and stay sober.